Hello and welcome to Janette's TV and Janette's TV podcast. I'm your host, Janette Burke, on the red carpet for the movie Butcher's Crossing starring Nicolas Cage. Now, it's an interesting story of a Harvard grad who moves all the way west to Buffalo Country in the state of Kansas and starts participating in fur trade. And we're going to see a lot more. But before we do, I want to remind you that if you haven't already done so, please click the link below to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, there's two ways you can support us. Patreon link below. No donation is too big or too small. And we also have perks for specific donations. Or you can purchase your choice of a Janette's TV t-shirt or sweatshirt, very similar to this, with your JTV logo and tagline. T-shirt or sweatshirt comes in, logo and tagline, or inspirational saying made by me and a previous interviewee in a former interview. Choose what you want, your color, your size. Everything is conveniently shipped to your front door and includes shipping and handling. Now on with today's episode.
To choose a project, what are you looking for first? The story, the script, the director?
What can I learn? I'm a student. What can I learn from this experience? Am I being challenged? Is this new for me? Do I think I have the life experience or the depth of imagination to make this character seem believable and sincere? That's what I look for.
And what drew you to this particular project?
I had never done anything like this before. I'd been invited to, well, first of all, I love classic American literature. I love the works of Joseph Conrad, Jack London. Jack London with Call of the Wild, and especially The Sea Wolf. I almost played Wolf Larson in a movie, and that didn't happen. I grew up reading Melville's Moby Dick and Captain Ahab, and so I thought Miller, this guy, this character in this movie, was kind of that ilk. He was something similar to that, and I wanted to have a chance to see if I can make that believable in some way. That was the challenge, and that was what I was looking for.
Well, you're a wonderful actor, and thank you so much for bringing so much depth to the characters you play.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're one of my favorite actors.
Thank you.
What I love is that in every role that you do, you challenge yourself as an actor to push yourself beyond the extreme. So I want to know what brought you to this role in a way to challenge yourself.
Well, it's look, I'll just tell it like it is. It's dark subject matter. It's not easy to watch, and we're talking about the near extinction of the American buffalo, and also what that did to the First Nation people. These are big subject matters, and my face is the face that's symbolizing that misguided and very dangerous ambition and bloodlust and greed in this movie. And that's scary, because it's the kind of thing I haven't really done before. And how do I make that real? So when you act in a movie and you're playing the villain, you don't want to look at that person as the villain. You want to understand that person. You want to understand that what's the human element that makes that person the way that person is. So that was the challenge. But there were moments, where I'm doing these scenes with the rifle and with the American buffalo, and it's like, wow, I'm starting to get disgusted. But then again, it's like hold up the mirror and show it for what it really was, and hopefully people think twice. And that kind of thing never happens again. But it's still happening. It's still happening with the trees. It's happening around the world. So I'm not saying this is a message movie, but I am saying it's holding up a mirror to that episode in history, and what can we learn from that by seeing it. Your director on this movie, Gabe, would not say this is a Western. He would say this is the time and the place. But it's more about an examination of.
That's what it was.
I love horses. I enjoy riding.
Can you tell us what it was like to film in the wilderness?
Fantastic. I mean, we were blessed to we shot in Blackfeet Nation, and our guide Irvin, he allowed us to go in. It's sovereign, it's their land, and they're the law. But they said they let us come in, and we went to some magical locations. A place called Two Medicines, one of the most powerful places I've ever been. Because of this movie, I got to go because they let us in.
Wow. Are there any classic westerns that inspired you this movie at all?
For me, no. No, I don't think this correlates with the classic themes of my other picture with the same company, really don't work. And then I would think about something like Sid Gilliam's Once Upon a Time in the West, Very Cooper. This movie is more
Thank you.
It's more even conceivable, like London. That kind of a storyline.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hey, I'm Janette from Janette's TV. And podcast.
Of course you are.
And I really want to talk to you because you're really the only main female character.
It's very true.
And I really want to ask you, what do you feel you bring to this movie from a female perspective?
Well, I mean, John Williams wrote a stunning, exquisite film about the 1870s. And the truth was, many of these little frontier towns like Butcher's Crossing, almost 25% of the population were prostitutes.
I think a fundamental question, apart from telling a gripping story, the question really is how do we exist in our natural environments and what is the full price of profit? It's got some big ideas, some big themes, but it's also a very powerful story with an incredible cast that includes Jeremy Bobb, Oscar winner Paul Raci, who you saw in Sound of Metal at the festival 3 years ago now, Rachel Keller, Fred Hechinger, and of course, Mr. Nicolas Cage is one of the stars of Butcher's Crossing as well. And the directors brought together this remarkable cast to tell a story that is set in the past but feels as timely as ever. Please join me in welcoming the director of Butcher's Crossing, Gabe Polsky.
Thank you. I don't know what you said, but thank you. But so I want to, first off, from the bottom of my heart, thank Cameron Bailey and his team for, seeing a rough cut of this film and, seeing something in it enough to get this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, in the best festival town in the world. Great audiences, great energy, great films. It's every time I come here, I feel lucky, so I want to, from the deepest of my heart, thank you for your support, okay? Now I'm going to introduce the cast and then tell a little story. So, first off, a guy that came here from the hospital because he just had a newborn and is so psyched about the film, Nicolas Cage. Next up, another leading man in the film, Fred Hechinger. Rachel Keller. Jeremy Bobb. Xander Berkeley. Irvin Carlson. He dealt with the buffalo in Montana. And finally, the producers, Molly Connors, Amanda Bowers, Andy Mason, and not here is Will Clark. And lastly, but not least, Paul Raci, who plays McDonald. So I want to tell you guys a little story before we start. So about a week before the shoot, I had a conversation with the producers, and it became clear that instead of 20-some days, that we were going to have to shoot this movie in 18 days. And I was very kind of shocked, and I'm I haven't made a lot of feature films. I've only made one, and I didn't really know what to do or who to call. And so a big friend and mentor of mine, Werner Herzog, I have his number, so I know he's a guy that probably would have some great advice and maybe some encouragement. And so I gave him a call and told him, hey, Werner, I've got 18 days to shoot this movie, what do you think? And there was a long pause, and he said, even a magician couldn't shoot this movie in 18 days. So I was kind of dumbfounded and depressed. It wasn't the words that I was looking for, and I was sort of thinking, then I hung up the phone, and all of a sudden this little bear cub starts running through basically the yard of this trailer home I was staying in. And it was looking for its mom, and it didn't know where it was, and it went down to the lake looking for its mom, and I was kind of freaked out because I thought, well, obviously if there's no mom, it's kind of dangerous. But anyways, I started watching this bear cub, and I was like, it looks kind of lost, and I kind of felt the same way. Anyways, I was thinking, what would Werner Herzog actually do in this situation, And then I remembered a quote from this famous Russian hockey player, Slava Fetisov. He would always tell me, Gabe, in Russia, when you have one choice, you have no fucking choice. And so I had no choice, and what Werner would do is he would dive right in, and this is what I want to do is raise this imaginary shot of whiskey to all the people involved in this film that did the impossible, worked with me on this treacherous journey, and went through this, really difficult shoot, and if John Williams, we wouldn't have done this book justice if we didn't get our asses kicked, and here's to getting your ass kicked and, being here. Thank you guys, and we'll talk after.
We've got a little bit of time to talk about the film, and I want to please bring out the team that made this remarkable film, Butcher's Crossing. Please join me in welcoming the director, Gabe Polsky, Nicolas Cage, Fred Hechinger, Rachel Keller, Paul Racy, Jeremy Bobb, Irvin Carlson, and Xander Berkeley, the team from Butcher's Crossing. Thank you so much for bringing the film. Gabe, I'll start with you, and I want to ask about just what drew you to adapting this book by John Williams. And this is a stretch because the films I know from you are about hockey. And now you've made a Western. I guess winter's the only thing in common, but what drew you to the book?
Yeah, as soon as I read the book, there was something about it that spoke to me kind of on a spiritual level. And what I mean by that is, the themes in the book, primarily, the idea of kind of what is ambition and why do we do what we do? And, how ambition can be such a powerful force in a positive way. It can create great things, but it could also be incredibly destructive. And so examining that, to me was really interesting. And also, I'm a guy that really likes, nature and going out into the wilderness and asking questions like, why are we here? What is all this? And going on adventures and so on. And so, I related to the character of Will, but I also related to the character of Miller because, I want to do good things, and so there's something like that spoke to me. And then I also am a proponent of the environment and, animals and so on, and I felt this had such a strong commentary on what we've been doing to the planet for the last, 500 years, but it was done in such a way that was just really compelling and not kind of hitting you on the head just directly with it, but it did make a strong point, I felt. And so all those things were really attractive to me.
When it comes to putting together a cast for a film like this, especially a Western, there was a time in Hollywood where there were actors who did their almost entire careers making Westerns. There's certain actors who were known for being prominent in Western movies, but these days, you're casting people who usually do not have that history. So when you're putting this story together and finding the right actors for these roles who may never have done a Western before, what drew you to the remarkable cast that you have on stage here today?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not like the hugest, Western fan. I just like great movies. I tend to not love Westerns because it's very, good and evil, and it's too kind of simplified for me, and gratuitously violent and so on. And so I didn't really see this as a Western, but as far as the cast, I really like actors that do the unpredictable things, and who have that sort of magnetic quality to them, and they make really interesting creative choices. And I think one of the most creative actors that we have on the planet is Nick Cage, and he's one of the biggest risk takers there is in terms of acting by far. He's willing to do a piece like this where most actors probably wouldn't want to play such a guy that does such bad things, and he's willing to do that, and he does it in such a creative and compelling way, and it's, I'm just lucky to have him because he also shows up. We didn't have a lot of time, and he just nailed it every time, and saved my butt. And then Fred Hechinger, he's similar in that he's always, what attracted me to him was that he's always also doing unexpected things, and that's really what attracted me to him, because a lot of other actors, they kind of play it safe, but he's always doing things that are a little bit different, and that's what catches my eye, and that's what I like, and I can say that about all the actors here. And that's kind of what I was really attracted to. As far as them fitting into the world and 1870s and so on, I kind of hope that if they're great, they're going to figure it out. So,
I want to go to you, Nick, and to Fred next to talk about just the dynamic between your two characters and how you built that. There's a lot of tension there, there's a lot of friction, but there's also the beginnings of an understanding through the course of the movie. How did you build that?
Well, if you'll give me just a minute to say thank you for inviting me to the Toronto International Film Festival. I have a pretty fascinating relationship with this film festival in particular. First of all, I think you're the greatest audience in the world. I want to say thank you because usually I'm the midnight movie slot, and you're moving me a little earlier now. I'm now the 9 o'clock slot. But my first time here was 1987. I came here with Norman Jewison for Moonstruck. So yes. It was important to me to see you all again and to be here. But getting to your question, the book, John Williams' book, is a blueprint. I like making movies that are based on great literature. It's a great gateway. It's a great way. An actor's greatest tool is his imagination. So the book starts to stimulate the imagination. And in terms of the relationship, what I was getting from the book was that Miller was seeing in Will an opportunity. He's frustrated, he's stuck, and he knows it's out there. He has this dream, he's seen it, and he's gonna get it, and he's gonna win at all costs. But it's not happening. So Will and what Fred brought, this rather beautiful naivete, this innocence, Miller just locks on it, and he almost wants to be sweet in the beginning and then bring him with him to the more ambitious and let's call it bloodlust side, the dark evil side that exists in all our hearts. You know, I wanted to make a movie called The Sea Wolf by Jack London. I almost did it with Ron Howard, and then he didn't. He wanted to make The Grinch instead. And so I always said I could play Milt Larson. And then I grew up watching Moby Dick. I could play Captain Ahab, and it never happened. But when Gabe brought me this, I thought now with Miller, I could get close to something like those kinds of characters, or Kurtz in Heart of Darkness. So the relationship I had with Fred, first of all, because the subject matter was very intense, and there's some of it, as you can see, is hard to watch. And it's, you know, we're doing these things to these beautiful animals, and it's history, and it did happen, and we should hold up a mirror to that, so it hopefully never happens again. But the idea with Fred was that we would go into these places together and do these intense scenes, and yet, thank God, he has a marvelous sense of humor. So when we got out of the scene, we could go to the side and go, okay, well, let's get out of that crummy corner of our minds, and let's have a joke, let's laugh. So I'd do my Paul Lynde impression, or I would start doing my impression of Richard Harris and Tarzan, talking about that, that's, whatever. And we would, he was always so over the top, you see. I'm going to kill that son of a bitch and rip his fucking head off. And so we would just start cracking up. And that was how we kept it going.
Truly. I love it.
And in both regards, Nick, like working with him, is such a deep joy, and he makes my job of playing Will so much easier, because the what we're talking about in terms of the unexpected choices, the kind of enigmatic beauty that you bring to every character, to have Miller characterized like that at the beginning creates a sense, at least how I saw it when we were building the scenes, that Will thought he was really on a journey, and I think it speaks to what was captivating and also a complete fallacy about manifest destiny. Just where that myth actually ends. So people individually who look and appear to be innovators are actually pawns of this sort of senseless, vicious, bloodlust-ridden pursuit of destruction and murder and violence. And I think the way that we were able to try and create that relationship together made it really easy, that it is at first this kind of love story, and this feeling of independent journeying. And in reality, it's as old a tale as it gets when it comes to what the blood that America is built on. So I felt that was really exciting to get into in terms of the relationship between these two characters.
Thank you. And Rachel, Paul, Jeremy, Irvin, Xander, I'm curious to know, Gabe had mentioned that you had 18 days to shoot this movie. This is a film set more than 100 years ago. In the space of 18 days and whatever prep time you had to put yourself into a different mindset, do all of that work that it takes to create a character that is not someone you would know, and get that work done and get the scenes done in 18 days. It could not have been easy. If you could just take us behind the scenes a little bit, what was it like making this movie with those kinds of pressures?
It was a nightmare. I've known few horrors as deep as this. It's not enough time to make this movie. That's just true. Needed more time. But I'd read the book a long time ago, so I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I don't know. It was one of the rare occasions where I felt sort of ready whenever. If I could get this project with me as part of it, I think I would have been ready as quick as I needed to be. I just really always loved this book so much.
For me, when Gabe called me, offered me this part, he wanted me first to read the book, of course, which I did. And when I started looking into John Williams and why he wrote the book, I found out he was a veteran of a foreign war. He was in the Air Force in World War II. And he was trying to write a coming-of-age story. I myself had served two tours in Vietnam on an aircraft carrier, the USS Coral Sea, as a hospital corpsman. No, please, listen, I was drafted. And so I went down the street and joined the Navy because I was afraid of going into the jungle. But, I did what I had to do, but partly because my grandfather said I had to. He was a World War I veteran. But, and I always say I went into Vietnam like John Wayne. I came out as Lenny Bruce because I realized over there what we were doing. We were mining the hell out of Haiphong Harbor relentlessly. So my point is, I see it as he wrote a coming-of-age story about this, not his experience in the war that he experienced, but it's the same thing. When I look at Will as he starts out his journey, I see myself up there going into Vietnam on the ship and all these sailors telling me what we're going to do when we get over there. And then at the end, I see myself coming home 70 pounds lighter and just miserable and hating myself and everything that I had to do. So preparing for this was easy because I wake up every morning thinking about Vietnam and everything that I went through. And so to see the men, the bloodlust, the greed, the business of the day, the business that we had to do, that's what I see. So it wasn't very hard for me to take a leap and do this Western, if you want to call it a Western. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything to add, Rachel, Irvin, Xander?
I heard about the book from Gabe like 6 years ago or something, and read it and loved it. And I watching it too. It's like this movie's chock full of restless men, and I felt like in the book and also in our film too that Francine, as a young woman who, like these frontier towns like Butcher's Crossing were sometimes made up of 25% young prostitutes, because if you wanted to make an independent life for yourself, that's what you did. And I found John Williams' writing of this character and the way that we portrayed her in the film as well so graceful and easeful inside of this restless dudes. So I felt grateful to be there. I was only there at the end, so they had all done all the skinning, and I heard lots of good stories about that, which I know was done with Blackfeet, right?
Yeah, no way do we have any access to any of that stuff without the Blackfeet. No way. Period. Like, I don't know.
Irvin, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I guess my part was, Gabe had me there as to, I run the Buffalo program there at Blackfeet, and to be there to watch, to direct everything that they've done with the buffalo, to make sure that everything was done right, nothing to hurt the animals, teach them how to skin, but just be respectful of all of the animals and do things right. These are wildlife; they're not domestic animals. So the 18 days too is really remarkable, because you just don't say, "Oh, cut, we got to do that over with these animals." When you get that shot, you don't come back and do it again. So to all of it, just even seeing tonight, all of the action is, my hats off to all of the characters, within this movie of doing it in 18 days and doing it with them animals there, the buffalo that I say are not domesticated animals. But one of the things that really hit me with the movie too is and I guess I know these are the history, and talked about the part about the greed, and even tonight watching even more so of these animals being hunted to near extinction, and all for greed. And it reminded me of even when they had the gold rush. They always go, and maybe there wasn't just go and go and go, and after gold, it was like, we got enough buffalo, let's leave. And no, I want to get the rest of them. I need more money. I need more fame. But that was a devastation to us as a people that was taken away. A lot of things that within our taken from us that to make way, I guess, for the new way, I guess. But the devastation of taking those animals, they were, to us, they're real culturally significant to us, spiritually. The animals are real spiritual to us. I could go on about some real stories that how since even the buffalo coming under my direction at my tribe and taking care of them, how that was a doing of theirs. And even bringing me today, a lot of places, the buffalo made that happen. And even meeting these people and Gabe and making this movie happen, those animals, those buffalo, they made that happen. And they're a very powerful animal. So to me too, watching tonight and seeing that devastation, you feel it in here, you know, of what happened there and to us and to that animal. So it was pretty powerful, I guess, watching that tonight. I watched earlier when Gabe had me check it out, but tonight watching it there with on the big screen, it even hit home. I mean, even more powerful of the way things happen and the way greed kind of runs us. It could be all of us, you know, but it was devastating. So in tonight, that really showed. I really felt that part of it. But anyway, I really thank Gabe for me being a part of that and helping to make sure that those animals were respected, that they were done right, and things were done right with them, and being a part of that.
Thank you. Jeremy, you want to add something?
So in light of what was just said, I think sometimes when we get to talking about these movies and these stories that we are a part of telling, we talk about the literature and the themes behind that and, what it was like to make it. But imagine a time where a whole culture is completely disregarded, and that's justified. And imagine the descendants of those people that were disregarded, then welcoming the descendants of those people who disregarded them into their homeland to make a movie and to teach them the traditions. I mean, these people welcomed us to ceremonies, spiritual ceremonies that were teaching moments for their own communities. Come and watch what we do and how we treat this creature. Come and learn from us. Let us show you how we do it. I can't imagine a bigger piece of generosity having been given to us. I can't say that I would be as generous were I a descendant of a disregarded people myself. And it's overwhelming to consider how generous it is to have us there and tell any story that's connected to their culture, let alone this one. I'll never forget it the rest of my life. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Sandra, was there anything you wanted to add?
I know it's very late and everybody must want to go home, and I'll just say very briefly, having been kicking around a long time, I've always loved telling stories and blending into the fabric of the story in whatever way I can to help tell that story. And I kind of hadn't realized I'd kind of grown up in the golden era of independent film, where there were 3 months to make movies like this and millions more dollars. And I just want to take my hat off. I don't have one on, rarely, I usually do. But to the producers, to both Altitude and Fife and Pictures that took a risk on a movie like this that's so hard to get made and so hard to get seen. And so they're these guys and gals behind the scenes that make this whole thing possible. And I think, all the things that Jeremy and Irvin saying, it's beyond commenting on, but I also really respect the people that allowed us to tell this story. made it possible.
Thank you. Last thing I just want to ask, thank you, Xander. When I was watching the film several weeks ago, I could not help but notice, and you mentioned Heart of Darkness, Nick, but I want to ask both Nicolas Cage and Gabe Polsky about the shades of Brando in Apocalypse Now, the shaven head, the sheer brutality of your character Miller. I mean, how much of that were you playing with?
Well, the fact is, believe it or not, Gabe wanted me to shave the head because he was thinking about Michael Jordan. And he was thinking about Michael Jordan on the court. And like that need to win. Isn't that in Miller, the need to win, to score, to win? And I started thinking about it. And then, of course, because there is a kind of Joseph Conrad Kurtz via, by the way of Coppola's Apocalypse Now, appearance to the shaved head, I thought, well, it sort of works, it coalesces, it could be both. It could be Michael Jordan meets Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. So, when I first saw one of the cuts, I was like, Gabe, the thing when I'm rubbing my head and I go like this with my fist, and that's a direct steal. You know that, right? I mean, we'll be nice and call it an homage, but maybe you want to take that out. I might, because, it's a little, he goes, well, no, I that's one of my favorite things you do in the movie. I said, you're really going to keep it in? So the question became, to Brando or not to Brando? And then he chose to Brando, so it's in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know how many people kind of immediately were able to recognize that. I wasn't able to, and I've seen that movie, a couple times or a few times, but I like it.
Let's try and reenact.
Yeah.
Did they say why, Willard? Why they sent you? They said you'd completely gone insane, sir.
Can you say the horror? The horror.
Well, yeah, that's next Tiff. The horror. Oh yeah, no.
I still love it.
Don't get me started because I've been doing like my understanding of Paul Lynde and Jack Nicholson. Okay, that's a whole other epiphany. That's one of the ways I was making him laugh because I said to myself, I really think Jack has been doing Paul Lynde. He had an epiphany. He must have been back in the 70s, the Paul Lynde Halloween special was like, how about a martini? And I was like, Wendy, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your fucking skull. I'm not Jack Nicholson, it's Paul Lynde. How about a martini? And the funniest thing is I actually went to the Oscars with Jack. He was my date. I was his date, however you want to look at it. He was up for About Schmidt. I was up for Adaptation. And I said, Jack, I just think haven't you been kind of doing Paul Lynde? And he kind of looked at me, and he had the biggest laugh on his face, but he didn't answer. And I said, something, Jack, you were great as the Joker, but, if I had done it, I definitely would have played him a little more gay. And he said, well, why is that, Nicky? Why is that? I said, well, because he's obviously in love with Batman. Come on.
Wow. Are you not glad you stayed? Thank you.
Sorry, I just had to sort of entertain myself and you. We've been doing this the whole shoot. Really? The paramedics have that same kind of gallows humor.
It was fun.
Unfortunately, we're out of time because I could go all night with this, but I thank you so much, all of you, for the film, for coming back to Toronto, for Butcher's Crossing, Gabe Polsky, Nicolas Cage, and the whole team. Let me do the rest of your names. Fred Hechinger, Rachel Keller, Jeremy Bob, Evan Carlser, Xander Berkeley, and Paul Racy. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us today on Janette's TV and Janette's TV Podcast. I'm your host, Janette Burke, signing off. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts with your family and friends. You will find us everywhere on the video or TV side, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, you name it, we're there. On the audio side, you will find us on iHeartRadio, Apple, Anchor, Buzzsprout, BuzzFeed, and that list goes on too. For a complete list of where to watch and listen to us, check the link below in the show notes. And until next time, continue to be fabulous.